Hello, this is Gary Hart, and I'm demanding that you listen to InYourHeadOnline.com, or I'll send a kabuki to your house and blow your ass green.
So I'd like to welcome to In Your Head, probably the most recognizable manager of the 90s, the legendary pallbearer, Percy Pringle.
In your head.
Welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I hope you say that. I hope you say the same thing after we finish.
I'm sure I will.
All right.
So first of all, I want to know how you doing health-wise.
I'm doing fantastic, man. I haven't felt this good in many, many years. Probably for the first time in 20 years, I weigh under 300 pounds, and I just feel great, man. I can get on the floor and play with my granddaughter and get back up too. and I walk every day 3 or 4 miles, and I feel really good. I appreciate you asking.
That's great. That's good news. And how about your wife? How's she doing?
My wife's doing well too. I appreciate you asking about her. As a matter of fact, it was just 4 years ago yesterday that she was diagnosed with cancer. And, of course, she had the surgery and the radiation and the chemotherapy. And praise the Lord, she's cancer-free today. We're all doing well. I appreciate that.
Oh, well, that's great. And tell everybody that they can find out more about you at percypringle.com, your website.
Yeah, probably more than you want to know. Everything you want to know or didn't want to know and more.
We're going to check that early. I really like the artwork on your website.
Yeah, I have a great webmaster. His name's Kurt Nielsen. He lives out in L.A. As you can see, he's a fantastic artist, and he's a dear friend as well. He also does the website for the Cauliflower Alley Club.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's just a great guy all the way around.
Are you going to be there this year, the Cauliflower Alley Club?
I'm going to do my best. I was there this year, this past April, and I'm going to do my very best to make it next year. I think it's going to be in June this coming year.
Oh, okay.
So we got just short of a year to go, so we got plenty of time.
Yeah.
I'm a lifetime member of the Cauliflower Alley, and if I can be there, I always do my best to show up.
Oh, cool. Maybe the In Your Head crew will make a out there one year.
Anybody that's a wrestling fan, they need to experience that at least one time.
Yeah.
It's have you been there before?
No.
No, it's you really need to experience that, and it's really a great thing. It really is.
Yeah. So are you retired now? Or do you have any future plans in the wrestling business?
Retired? Me? Retired?
I'll never be retired.
If you've been to my website, you know good and well I'm not retired. Especially this, I got. In fact, no, I'm not retired. My regular talent contract that I signed in 2003 with WWE expired on July the 10th of this month. But before it expired, I signed one of those unique new Legends contracts.
Right.
It's a multi-year contract where the WWE is free to market, the pallbearer, continue to market the pallbearer character, video games, DVDs, VHS tapes, the whole 9 yards, including publishing my autobiography.
Oh.
Plus they'll be booking me on, personal appearances, autograph signings, reunions, and stuff like that. And possibly I might have a spot in the Hall of Fame, one day. That would be a...
Oh, definitely.
But as far as retiring, no. In fact, I got an indie show tomorrow night. I got an indie show Friday night. I got an indie show Saturday night. I just came to terms with the Legends of the Ring reunion, the Legends of the Ring 3.
I just saw that.
On October the 1st in Edison, New Jersey, and I've heard from other reunions and other independents, and folks want to do shoot interviews with me. And
excellent.
And here's your chance to grab me before we get to the real shoot interview. Let's do some shooting in your head.
All right, and just so everybody knows, they can check more about that at legendsofthering.com. Were you surprised when they brought you back the last time for the Dead Man rebirth of the Undertaker?
Oh. Yes, I was. It really saved my life. It really did. In fact, I had so much problems there for a couple of years. I'm not crying or anybody's shoulder or anything, and I'm not trying to do that. But with my wife's cancer, we lost a grandson. It was just I can sit here and make excuses, all night long, but I put on a tremendous amount of weight. At that time, I weighed 525 pounds.
Wow.
I was a walking dead man, you know, and I knew that I could never return, you know, to the business, you know, in that condition. I couldn't even walk out and get my mail or my newspaper, much less do anything else. So when the call came, I guess I got the first call in about August of 2003 from Jim Ross with the WWE, and he said, "Percy, we have an idea for you, and we'd like to talk to you about it." And that just sent me more into depression because I knew my health wouldn't allow me to do anything, you know.
Right.
Here it was. I had another chance to grab that golden ring again with the WWE, and I wasn't able to do it because of my health. So I didn't return Jim's call. In fact, he called 2 or 3 times. I didn't return his calls, and it got to a point where he was really concerned, and he said, "Percy, why aren't you calling me back?" I've known Jim Ross for many years. I knew him I knew him from my Dallas days when he was working for Bill Watts in Mid-South, you know, and for WCW. When I was in Dallas during the Von Erich years, I knew him from way back then. So he knew something was wrong, just the fact that I wasn't returning his calls. So he sent me an email so I could hide behind the computer keyboard there, right?
Right.
So I answered his email and told him that my health just wouldn't allow me to come back. I didn't elaborate or anything because I was too ashamed. I weighed 525 pounds, man. I was dying, you know, and I was ashamed to tell him that. But long story short, he asked me, he says, "Percy, what can we do to help you? What can we do?" And I'd already researched the gastric bypass surgery, and I knew that, and from talking to my doctor and everything, that probably was going to be the only thing that was going to save my life. And I told him, I said, "Jim, you know, I weigh I just shot with him. I said, I weigh 525 pounds. My health is the shits. You know, I'm going to die. And if I don't have this gastric bypass surgery, you know, and I don't have insurance to cover it." And he says, "Well, let me talk to Vince and I'll get back with you." So about a day or two later, he called me back. He says, "This is what we will do. We will assist you financially in getting this gastric bypass surgery that you want." And to backtrack just one step, he told me what the idea was. He told me that they wanted me to return at WrestleMania 20 with The Undertaker. And this was in, say, August or September. So we still had October, November, December, January, February, March. We had about 6 months to go. So they told me they went ahead and signed me to a contract right away, immediately. And I started getting a check immediately every week. They started paying me while I was sitting here at home a couple of months before I had my gastric bypass surgery. Plus, they footed part of the bill, not the entire bill, but a majority of it. And I had the surgery, and thank God the surgery was a success. And I started losing weight at a tremendous rate. I mean, a pound a day, sometimes more. But what it was doing, it was also taking a toll on my already messed up body, and the fact that when you have that surgery, you can't get enough protein, you can't get a lot of the nutrients and minerals that you need to keep your strength up. So, skipping, you know, way ahead, by the time I got to WrestleMania, I was down. You know, I'd already lost 120, 130 pounds, and but I was really weak, real weak because, well, like I said, the lack of protein, and I was having problems climbing stairs. And, you know, so I had problems climbing the stairs to get into the ring, you know, with The Undertaker and stepping through the ropes. But making a real long story short, that's how it happened, and that's how I came back, and it was just a blessing. And it was an answer to a prayer. And even though that it turned out to be a short run,
right? You
know, because of what we did at the Great American Bash that following June, you know, and a lot of people don't understand why, you know, that happened, why that we buried the Paul Bearer character in concrete.
Right.
And, you know, without wasting a lot of your time, all this is on my website. I have stories about all this stuff that goes into detail about, you know, if you're interested more in what I'm telling you, if you visit my website, you'll find out more. But another long story short is that, you know, my health was so weak. I was so weak. I was struggling to stay on the road, you know. I was on the road with Taker for about 3 months. And Vince knew I was having problems, and he didn't want anything to happen to me out on the road. So the best thing I had a gallbladder problem, and I had to go in for emergency gallbladder surgery. And when I went to have that done, is when they decided to have the Paul Bearer character kidnapped by the Dudley Boys, and then eventually, you know, I got buried in concrete.
Yeah.
So Vince really saved my life twice. He saved my life by helping me get the surgery. He saved my life by pulling me off the road, and paid me the entire, up until 2 weeks ago. I've received a check every week since 2003, since September of 2003.
Right.
So he's really took care of me, and a lot of people have a lot of bad things to say about Vince, and I'm always asked, and you're probably thinking about it, what do I think about Vince?
Right, I was going to ask that.
You know, what can I say bad about the guy? You know, I wouldn't call him a genius, but yet I wouldn't call him a dummy. You know, he has his hits, he has his misses. He's a normal human being, just like we all are. But if you do a good job for him, he'll take care of you. Mm-hmm. And I was on the WWE payroll for almost 14 years, and I'm proud to say that I've done a good job for the guy, for Mr. McMahon, and he took care of me.
Yeah. I know another guy with a similar story is William Regal. He always claims Vince saved his life by helping him with his rehab.
Absolutely. And just not the list, there's a long list of guys that Vince has helped through the years. Mm-hmm. A lot of them you know about, a lot of them you don't know about, that they haven't told, you know.
Right.
But he's a fantastic businessman. Even though that he's changed our business completely around, you know, from the old school wrestling that I was brought up in. It's 2005 now. I really feel if I had an emergency right now, I could pick up the phone and call him and he would help me. But then I know, and he knows, that if he needed something from me, I would do the same for him. And a lot of people, you know, the internet's really rough on guys sometimes, and they've been particularly rough on me through the years on some of the sites. You know, if I say good things about Vince, they go, oh, there he goes, kissing ass, you know, trying to get back in the WWE. And that's far from being the truth. And after I finish this interview, I think you'll know me a little bit better and see that I'm not that kind of guy. I'm just a good old country boy from Alabama, you know. And
if you say the opposite, people say you're bitter.
And if I say bitter things about the company, you know, they say, oh, he's just an old washed up bitter guy that they've let go, you know. It's neither true. Neither one is true. Mm-hmm. I have been in the business over 30 years. I've been very, very blessed to have such a career. I have done everything I have ever dreamed of doing and more. You know, I always dreamed when I was wanting to get into the business of working in Madison Square Gardens. I've done that countless times. I wanted to have an action figure. I've had action figures. I wanted to be on a video game. I've had, you know, it's what a thrill it is to walk into a bookstore and see your face on the front of a magazine or on a videotape at Blockbusters or whatever, you know. And and I'm not kissing ass. I don't have to kiss ass anymore. If I ever did, you know, I don't think I ever was a big ass kisser, but I don't have to kiss ass anymore, and I'm not kissing ass. You know, that's just the facts.
Did you think that was a good ending for the Paul Bearer character?
It was, hindsight being 20/20, and you know, I wouldn't call it an ending.
Right.
Because, you know, a lot of the fans and the internet, you know, they kind of chewed it around a little bit, saying that the WWE killed the character. We didn't kill the character. You know, the character wasn't killed.
Right, it was left open.
It was, you know, the character was buried in concrete. He was taken out, you know, in time. You know, he suffered some, you know, whatever, you know, some breathing problems and stuff in the concrete and stuff, but the character wasn't killed. You know, with the history that the Paul Bearer character has, with the history that as long as there's an Undertaker, as long as there's a Kane, Paul Bearer's never going to be dead.
Right.
You know, because we've created a monster there, and there'll always be ties there. So I was kind of sad. It was kind of emotional, you know, sitting in that damn box with having that damn concrete and everything, and it really was. But hindsight being 20/20, everything has worked out for the good, man. I'm a new man. I'm a grandpa. I feel great. And things are good these days. They really are. I appreciate that.
Cool. Are you proud of The Undertaker, seeing him rise in the WWE from when you managed him when he first came in to,
oh, man.
You know, now he's a legend, and they say he's the, you know, locker room leader of SmackDown.
Proud isn't the word. Mark Calloway is a dear, dear friend of mine. He's like part of my family. We've been down so many roads together, so many miles in the air and on the, you know, in the car through the years, and we have a very, very special and unique bond that it's just, you know, I don't think I don't have the words to describe it. It's just he's family, and I love him to death, and I definitely don't have to kiss his ass.
What did you think about when he was the biker, the American Badass gimmick?
I hated it.
Oh, really?
Because they took my fat ass and kicked me to the curb, you know. They stuck me back in the back as an agent, you know, as a talent scout. And of course, you know, I love the spotlight. I love being out in front of the fans. I love the fans. I love performing. So when I got pushed to the back, you know, it kind of hurt my feelings a little bit, but I still had a job. I still was getting a check every week. I still was being able to pay my bills. But yet I was seeing the Undertaker character that I knew changed so much, but I knew why they were doing it, you know. It added to the Undertaker's longevity without a doubt, you know.
Right.
Because he constantly changed and renewed his character, and we're lucky still to have that character today because of those times that he went to the badass and shit. He sure couldn't have took my big butt and stuck it in a sidecar on the Harley Davidson, you know, and rolled me down the ramp to the ring.
Well, that would have made for some interesting TV.
Yeah, it would have. Yeah, I don't know how they'd got me out of that sidecar, but things would be different today. But you know, I am very, very proud of Mark. I'm so proud of Kane, Glenn Jacobs, because that character came from me and Mark. You know,
right?
We had come up with that Kane character before we even found somebody to play the part. And Undertaker and myself were doing a couple of shots for Jim Cornette, Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and we ran into Glenn Jacobs, who was he had just broken into the business as Unibomb. And Mark had a couple of matches with him while we were there, and he had it. He had it, the capital IT that you always hear about, you know. And we went back to the WWF, or WWF at that time, you know, WWE, and took his name with us. So they gave him a tryout. Next thing you know, they used him as Isaac Yankem. They used him as a fake Diesel, you know, and as Isaac Yankem, and then he became Kane. And when he put on that Kane mask, that was it. You know,
well, that's the thing, though. Sometimes people say they stick guys with bad gimmicks, but if you have a good attitude, you know, they might come up with something better for you along the road. You know, they tried out Kane with.
Yeah, if you have it, I keep talking about it. You know, if you have it, they know it, and they will continue to find the right thing for you. And that's what happened with Kane, with Glenn Jacobs. They put Isaac Yankem on him, that wasn't right. They put the fake Diesel on him, that wasn't right. But when he put on that red and black Kane mask and put him with me and Taker, it was right.
Were you worried when he lost the mask?
Yes, I was. From the accent, I guess this question is coming from England.
Right.
I love your country, man. I love traveling over there. I've been over there many times. And to answer your question, I was very worried. But you know, hindsight being 20/20 again, I guess it was the right thing to do, and he's better now than ever.
It's worked out well. And I think they could always go back to him putting the mask on if they want to do a thing where he
sure. Oh, absolutely.
wants to be the monster again.
With our characters being the way that they are, my character, Undertaker's character, and Kane's character, it's endless. The things that can be done is endless. That's why I get so hot, you know, and here they go. The Internet's going to say, oh, he's bitter at the creative team, you know. The creative team, you know, when they terminated my contract here, the creative team couldn't come up for anything for Paul Bearer. Excuse me, please. My God. As long as there's an Undertaker and a Kane, there's a Paul Bearer. How in the world can you not come up with something for Paul Bearer?
Right.
But, you know, you never know. There might be something down the road or something. But, like I said, I'm real happy right now. I've enjoyed being at home, and I feel good. My health is good. I'm enjoying business. I'm enjoying the life for a change.
With a lot of the big guys that they have there, I was thinking maybe like A-Train when he was there. I always thought they could take a guy like that and put a mask on him and put him with Paul Bearer and have him feud with Kane or Undertaker. You know, give one of these guys a new gimmick, and with a manager with him, someone do a mouthpiece for him. Yeah,
it's all possible, but you know, anything you can do anything in our business. You've seen everything, and anything can be done. You know, whatever. I was fortunate enough to, not only was I associated with Undertaker and Kane, you know, I did have a run with Mick Foley when he was Cactus Jack.
Right.
When he was Mankind, and we had a great run there. And I managed Vader for a while there, and also the late Terry Gordy as the Executioner was there for a while. But other than that little group there, I always had my ties with the Undertaker, whether I was with him or I was against him for almost 14 years, you know, in the WWE.
You think they still need managers in wrestling? Because
absolutely.
maybe Undertaker, right at to begin with, he needed a mouthpiece with him because he really didn't talk a lot. And same with Kane. Guys like that might not have got over as big as they did.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of guys that could benefit from a good manager these days. They really could. They have great bodies. They're great in the ring. They're just, have a shortcoming as far as doing interviews goes. Mm-hmm. And doing interviews are so much different these days than they were when I broke into the business, back in the early 70s. It was our job, we didn't have writers. We didn't have a script to go by. And it was all left up to the wrestler. So you learned how to talk. You learned how to do an interview. You learned how to sell tickets through the television set and through radio and other forms of media. So you had to be able to talk to survive. Unless you had a good manager who could do that for you. And thank God that I was very blessed, with my gift of gab and this ugly face, because that's what paid my bills for 30 years,
You think it's harder for the guys, though, to learn promos now, since most of them just come from Ohio Valley?
Oh, absolutely, because, almost practically all the promos are scripted these days.
Right.
The writers hand you a script, you memorize it, you do it. That's one thing that, to tell you the truth, I really never had a scripted interview the whole time I was in WWE, WWF, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. Vince trusted me enough and knew of my abilities where I didn't need a script. I just had some bullet points that I needed to hit, the important points I needed to hit. That's all I needed. Many other guys, they have a whole page or 2 pages of stuff they have to memorize. And you can't be comfortable memorizing a script and give the facial reactions and give the reflections in your voice that you need to do and everything, memorizing a script.
Right.
So I never had to do that.
Help you build your own character, too.
Right, absolutely. You understand where I'm coming from.
Right. Say something that you'd want to say, not someone thinks that your character should say.
Right, because nobody knows your character better than yourself, the person portraying it.
Right. Now, before you came to WWE, you were manager as Percy Pringle. What did you think about the character when they came up with it? The Paul Bearer character.
I was scared to death. I didn't know. It was just... here I was going from... the WWE was the thing. I signed my first contract with the WWE in December. In fact, it was December 22nd of 1990, and I remember that date because that's my wife and I's wedding anniversary. So on our wedding anniversary in 1990, I signed my first contract with them, and I started on the road with The Undertaker about a month later in January of 91. And of course, the rest is history. But I had bleached blonde hair. I had blonde hair all my career up to that point.
Right.
And they called me and they said, "We're going to call you Paul Bearer. We want you to dye your hair black, mustache black, eyebrows black, buy a black suit. You're going to be the Undertaker's mortician, manager." And it just so happens, some people know and some people don't know, I'm a legit mortician. I have a degree in mortuary science. I'm a licensed funeral director and embalmer, and I have maintained my licenses to this very day. I'm still licensed. I've kept up with the continuing education, and I'm licensed in 3 states. And so Vince took my real shooting, degree as a mortician and combined it with my years as a wrestling manager and put them together, and the result was Paul Bearer. So I was scared about it, yet I was so excited about it because I was getting my big break, with the WWF. And but it didn't take long to get used to it, I'm telling you. It really didn't at all.
But did you ever think it would get over as big as it did? Or have such a long run?
No. I didn't have a clue. Yeah. I didn't know what to think. It just, as the time went by, it just got better and better, and things just seemed to move faster and faster. The years just went by really quick. Boom, 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 those years did. Because we were having so much fun. We had a fantastic run, with Hulk Hogan. When Undertaker won the World Championship from Hulk Hogan, my God, what a feeling that was,
Right.
And then, even though he didn't have it a long time, just the fact that he beat Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, and at that time, it was a big deal any time a title would change.
And we had a fantastic run with the Ultimate Warrior. We had a fantastic run with Kamala, Yokozuna. It just goes on and on and on. And we were so involved. We were in the main events all the time. We were traveling all over the world all the time. Time just flew by. It was just boom, 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 you know. Things were really good. I was so blessed. And if I never do anything again in the business, you know, never again, I'll never forget, you know, what I've accomplished. And I praise the Lord and all the fans that have supported me through the years. It was some good times. It really was.
Yeah, it's very memorable. Before, when you were Percy Pringle, who were some of the favorite guys you managed back then?
Gosh, you know, in fact, on my website, and I have a section called Story Time where I write some stories and stuff about different things. One day I got a few emails asking me to make a list up of all the guys that I managed, you know, so I started making a list up, and I've come up with like over 40 guys that I've been with through the years. But the guys that I was with in world class, you know, I was with the Dingo Warrior, who eventually became the Ultimate Warrior.
Right.
I managed this young redheaded guy that wanted to be a wrestler. He called his first match. He wore a mask, called himself Texas Red. He turned out to be the Undertaker.
Ah, excellent.
I managed Steve Williams, who became Steve Austin, who became Stone Cold Steve Austin when he first started in the business. I also managed Mick Foley, who was a future Mankind in Dallas. I was with Blackjack Mulligan, Arcidi, Black Bart, Killer Tim Brooks, Matt Bourne.
You were with Rick Rude for a little while too, weren't you?
Oh yeah, I was before I went to Dallas. I first put together with Rick Rude down in Florida, and Championship Wrestling from Florida territory, you know, out of Tampa. When Eddie Graham was still alive. In fact, Rick Rude and I were there when Eddie Graham passed away, when he unfortunately, you know, committed suicide.
Right.
We were there then, and I had my Pringle dynasty down in Florida before we ever went to Dallas. And so I was with Rick Rude there in the Missing Link, and I was with the Missing Link too in Dallas too. So, I mean, it's just a countless list of guys that I've been with through the years, Buzz Sawyer, gentleman Chris Adams, Joe LeDuc. Unfortunately, a lot of the guys have passed away, you know, now, and it's really something else to look at that list of names and see.
Did you ever think that Dallas? That's all right. I'm sorry. Did you ever think the Dallas territory would go down? Because it was really hot for a long period of time.
Oh, it was. When we first got there, no, sir, I did not. It was the thing, you know. Coming from my career there was always. Fortunately, I was always a step up. You know, Florida was good. Florida was the old school wrestling territory. You know. We had Gordon Soley, you know, as our announcer down there. You know, he was announcer there for years with Eddie Graham and that bunch. I know you know all the history about that territory. But when we were there, it was a good territory. You know, it wasn't as hot as it was back in the Dusty Road days and stuff, but it was still a good place to be. And I went from there to Dallas, and Dallas was a step up. You know, they had the big world-class wrestling, you know, going all over the world, you know, as far as their television goes. And we were selling out Reunion Arena and doing the big shows in the Texas Stadium and stuff. So to answer your question, when I got to Dallas, it was hot. There were people lined up around the block to get into the Sportatorium, you know, on Friday nights. And it was just amazing. And I thought it would never end. And then the tragedies, you know. I came in right after David Von Erich passed away, right after they had done the first David Von Erich Memorial at Texas Stadium. Right. I came in the following year there. I was there for the second one. And then the tragedy started happening, which everybody knows all about. You know, we lost Mike Von Erich, and Kerry had his motorcycle wreck, and which resulted in the loss of his foot. Then we lost little Chris Von Erich. You know, it was just, and Gino Hernandez passed away while I was there, and it was just one thing after another, and just tragedies. It just kept happening. You know, coming out every time you get over one, something else would happen, and it all took a toll on the business. Until eventually, in about 1989, is when Jerry Jarrett came in and took it over and renamed it the USWA.
Right.
And I was there then. In fact, Eric Embry and myself tore the world-class banner down from the walls of the Sportatorium when they changed over to USWA. That was another, you know, highlight of my career. I cried like a baby that night. I was so sad to see that company die. It really did. And
end of an era.
I miss it. I've had. But if it wasn't for those days, you know, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't have had the career that I had in World Wrestling Entertainment, you know. It was always a solid foundation that I was able to build on all those years, and I keep saying it over and over again because it's really true. I've been very blessed. I really have.
Do you think that's bad for wrestling, the closing of all the territories and and then the closing of WCW, only having really one big wrestling federation.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, how would you like just to have one hamburger joint in town?
Right.
How would you just like to have a McDonald's? And you can't go to Burger King, you can't go to Wendy's, you can't go to Taco Bell. You don't have your choice of food. You got to eat the same thing all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's my analogy. That's what I compare it to. I like to try different things. I like to eat different things. I don't want to eat the same thing all the time.
I think it's
the fans deserve the same thing. Why should they have to? Even though the WWE meal is good, even though their Happy Meal is fantastic, you don't want to eat it every day.
Exactly.
So why not have a taste of something else? So, it's not like it used to be, and I really feel sad that our fans of today that don't know anything about the way it used to be, can experience that old school, that old time, and I don't know. I just keep rambling on. You have to cut me off sometimes. Sometimes I go off on a tangent.
That's all right.
Rambling. I start talking so fast. That's what me and Jim Cornette have a lot in common. That's
one of the best talkers. Yeah.
I love Jimmy to death.
Do you have any good road stories you want to tell? One or two from your Dallas days?
Oh, Lord, road stories.
That won't get you in too much trouble?
It's like, it's like the Undertaker says. A lot of people ask why the Undertaker hasn't come out with a book, and he tells me, what he's told me, we really can't tell the good ones.
Right.
The real good, juicy, I can't tell them, I can't. And in fact, I'm working on my autobiography, and I'm trying to find a politically correct way to tell some of these stories.
Yeah, you don't want to get any of the wives mad at any of the guys.
It's hard to point fingers when you point a finger at somebody. You got three of your own fingers pointing back at yourself.
Right.
So you got to be careful what you say, because if you throw dirt at somebody, there's a lot of dirt that can be thrown back on you.
Right.
Especially in my case, in all of our cases, in all of the old school guys. We all came from the same place. We all did the same things. But it's road stories, gosh, I draw blanks, and there's so many that I draw a blank to which one to tell,
Right.
So you wanted to hear one from Dallas, right? Or do you want to hear one from...
Any place is good. One of your most memorable.
Okay. One that really just pops, trying to think of one that pops in my head really quick was, we mentioned that Undertaker beating Hulk Hogan for the world title.
Right.
And we had that short run. Right after we beat Hogan, took the belt, we had some shows up in Canada, and I'm trying to think what area it was. It was in Ontario area there, in Toronto and Ottawa. And so anyway, Montreal. We made that loop there, driving it. And Undertaker, I usually drove most of the time. And if you ever rode in the car with Mark Calloway, you know why. He thought he was Dale Earnhardt, and my God. And I would say, Mark, please let me drive, So this one particular evening, we had the title. We just won the title from Hogan. We were driving. We drove from Montreal to Ottawa to do a show, and we were on our way back. And we were in a hurry to get back to Montreal because they had some good strip clubs there. I'm telling you, the best strip clubs. We've been to strip clubs all around the world. And Undertaker was really a connoisseur of the strip clubs back in those days. He kind of outgrew that, and I outgrew it too. But we were a little younger then, and we liked to hit the strip clubs after the shows.
Right.
But Montreal had the big strip clubs, so we had to make this drive from Ottawa back to Montreal, and we wanted to be there before last call. So Davey Boy Smith, and I forgot who he was riding with him, was ahead of us, and Mark says, "Follow Davey Boy." I went, "Oh hell." Because I knew how Davey Boy drove, too. So here we are, flying down the highway towards Montreal, trying to make a last call at a strip club, doing 120 miles an hour. And I never drive like that. I swear, I never drive. I don't think I've ever drove like that since.
Right.
Because I was bound and determined that I was going to get Mark Calloway to the strip club before the last call.
We'll have to get the address for that strip club after the show.
So I paid no attention to the gas gauge on the counter. We had a Lincoln Continental. We always rented the big car because we were big guys,
Mm-hmm.
So, and I wasn't paying no attention to the gas gauge. And I didn't know when you're driving 120 miles an hour, it uses a lot more gas than when you do when you're driving the speed limit, So I wasn't paying no attention to the gas thing. So all of a sudden, we're flying down by. I'm following Davey Boy doing 120 miles an hour. And all of a sudden, the car starts missing. Boom, 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 boom. And I look at Mark. He looks at me like, what's going on, Davey just keeps going. He takes off, and I slow down and just coast on over to the side of the road. We sit there for a moment, and we couldn't figure out what was going on. It seemed like for eternity, but it wasn't but about 30 seconds. I looked down the gas gauge. We were out of gas. And here we are, I looked at Mark and I said, look at us, the world champion, the World Wrestling Federation world champion, sitting on the side of the road, and we're out of gas. There's the belt laying on the back seat, and we could even get a cup of gas for the World Championship belt. But needless to say, and back then we didn't have cell phones. This was, what year did he beat Hogan? It was 91, I believe.
Yeah, early in his run.
It was a Survivor Series, November of 1991. And cell phones wasn't a big thing then. We all had beepers, pagers and stuff. But we didn't have cell phones. And so we couldn't call nobody, and we were out in the middle of nowhere. So we just had to, here's Paul Bearer, manager of the world champion. The Undertaker's sitting in the car, standing on the side of the road, waving at people as they go by, trying to get somebody to stop. And, oh, man, it's one of those you had to be there experiences, Yeah. But there's a lot of stories like that. There really is.
I don't know if you'd want to stop if you saw the Undertaker and Paul Bearer on the side of the road.
Exactly. That's another thing, who? You're right. You're right on the money. I'm glad you understand the story I was trying to tell.
We'll have to get the address for that strip club after the show. We'll make a road trip.
I think I've washed that out of my memory. I'm sure it's still there, though. If not, another one's taking its place.
Right. How was it working for a TNA?
TNA came at a bad time in my life. It was during that 1 year that I was away from the WWF, and that was the year that I had gained so much weight and was having all the problems that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
And I've always been good friends with the Jarretts, even prior to the late 1980s when they came in and took over World Class. I had known them. In fact, when I first started in the business, I found a pay slip a couple of years ago that I had gotten when I had worked Memphis TV for Jerry Jarrett in 1974 when I first started in the business. So, we have a long history, and I love Jeff to death. I consider Jeff to be a dear friend of mine. And they knew the problems I was having, so that's why they brought me in to give me a job, But I had gained so much weight. I felt horrible. I looked horrible. And they knew that I was just walking death, so I was only there for a couple of months. And it was really, really hard. It just wasn't good. But I'm extremely proud of what they've done with that company, and I wish them the best. I want them to see their TV situation get straightened out here soon,
Right.
And let's get another company, and give the fans another choice.
Yeah.
We're talking about just
not just the fans. It gives the boys another place to work.
Absolutely.
They can't sign everyone.
There's a lot of boys looking for work out there these days. Just the fact I'm finding this out. Just the fact that I'm taking indie bookings and reunions and stuff like that. There's a lot of guys out there. I'm telling you, the cup overflows. Well, not just new guys just breaking in, but older guys with experience that don't have a place to work anymore.
Right. There's just there's a certain amount of spots that WWE can have.
Right.
Right. Was Vince Russo there when you were?
Yes, he was. Yeah.
Do you get along with him?
Yes, I do. I really do. I've never had one problem with Vince Russo. I first met Vince Russo. He was working for a radio station. I believe it was in Hartford, Connecticut. It was somewhere around Stamford, a little town around Stamford. And whenever we'd run there, he would come there trying to get interviews with the boys and stuff. And he would hang around the back door of the dressing rooms, And that's where I first met him. And he eventually started. He kept hanging around. He eventually started working for the magazine, the WWF magazine, and the rest is history. But I never had a problem with Vince. I never did. Probably because when he had some kind of power with the company, with the WWF, was that, he was writing. That's when he started writing scripts and stuff. And like I said, my stuff wasn't scripted. So I didn't have to never tell him no. And I guess as long as you never had to tell him no, you got along with him. I never had to tell him no, and things were always cool.
Right.
And I still hear from him every once in a while, and there's no problems there at all.
Well, that's good. Now, before you got into wrestling, were you a fan of wrestling growing up?
I think I was born a fan. I think my parents took me to my first wrestling match when I was 3 or 4 years old, and it's virtually been nonstop ever since. It was just meant to be. It was just chiseled in that stone that chiseled in that concrete that my fat ass was buried in Norfolk. I was meant to be in this business, and I guess I'm going to die in this business.
They got you out of the concrete, right? You're not doing the interview in a
I'm still digging some out of my ass.
Oh, okay.
Every once in a while, I'll find a piece, in my ear or my nose or somewhere. There's still some falling out somewhere. That was some nasty shit. I'm telling you. I hope I can say those words on your show.
Oh yeah, you can say anything you want.
I'm trying to be clean, but when you start talking about that nasty concrete, it was just that. It was just nasty shit. What else can I call it? It was just shit.
You said you were doing indie shows now. Is there any guys you see on the indie shows you think will be big stars in the next year or so?
Oh God, there's a lot of young guys out there that have tremendous potential. I'm a lot of guys. For a while, I was a talent scout for WWE.
Right.
I told you before when Taker was doing the badass stuff, and we had like 4 or 5 farm clubs going on at that time. We had one in Wes Thatcher had one in Cincinnati, and then of course OVW, Jim Cornette and Danny Davis is in Louisville.
Heartland was.
Yeah.
I just said Heartland was Les Thatcher's.
Right, Les Thatcher. We had UPW, Rick Bassman out on the West Coast in L.A., and we had some guys down in Puerto Rico. Savio Vega, remember he was with the WWF for a while. They had a little territory down there. We had a couple of our guys that we had under developmental contracts in all these different territories. So what I did, I just traveled around from territory to territory, every week. I'd pick a different one every week and just go to their matches, check out the talent, make sure everything was cool. And that was a great gig. It really was. But like I said, I like being in the spotlight. But back to your original question, yeah, I see guys all the time. They have tremendous potential. But I just wish that they could, I keep going back to the way that I was brought into the business, the way I was again, and the old school traditions. I just wish that they could have a piece of that, could just understand where I'm coming from when I talk to them, because I guess they must think of me like I used to think of the old timers back when I was breaking in. When you're trying to tell them stories, they just can't understand unless they've done it, and they can't just. They can't understand, but they're doing a great job, and I'm glad to see that we have a lot of guys that's coming on that's going to be filling some of these boots, in the next few years.
Do you think WWE should have more than one developmental territory?
I think so. Absolutely. They cover the world. Why not have of course, please.
Right.
They definitely need more than one, without a doubt. I don't know. Did you see recently that they fired Jim Cornette? Yes, I did.
Do you think that's going to hurt Ohio Valley and WWE?
I'm not privy to all the details. I don't know. I'll be the first to tell you I don't know everything.
Right.
I'll say that Jim is a dear friend of mine. He has been for many, many years, and we are so much alike. We really are in a lot of ways. In our thinking about the business and the way we perform and this and that and the other. But I understand. I don't know. I haven't talked to Jim since the firing or whatever, but I understand that he's still going to have his corporate ties to that OVW company because that's his company.
Right.
Him and Danny Davis started that company, so he still has a financial interest in it. So even though he was fired from, and I could be wrong, I might very well be wrong, but this is what I understand. Even though he was fired from WWE, he still is a part of OVW.
Yeah,
that's what I understand.
I don't know. I guess is that what you understand too? So hopefully I'm on the right track. I don't want to be giving any kind of wrong information out.
No, I think that's right.
You stick with me, kid. We'll be all right.
All right, man.
Man from England knows his stuff.
I love England. If there's one thing I miss about being with the WWE all those years, I love the overseas traveling. A lot of the guys hate it. Most of them can't stand it. But I loved it. Everywhere we went, I would go sightseeing. When I first went to London, I've been to London many times, all over the country, all over Europe and the UK there, and I would go see all the sights. I've seen everything there more than once. I loved it. I loved the people. I loved the food. I loved traveling. That was always my fun. It was always something good for me.
Were the plane trips hard for a lot of the wrestlers because they're all like big guys, like you mentioned before?
Oh God, yes. Oh yeah. Some of them were really brutal. They really were. But most of the time, like if we were taking long flights, like overseas or something, they would, they wouldn't be sticking everybody back in coach. they would rent, they would get the business class or first class seat for everybody.
Right.
So there was a lot of times we'd be on these big 747s, flying across the big pond, and the whole business class and first class was all the WWF.
Mm-hmm.
Now that was some fun days. Oh man! Of course we had to have some cocktails going over, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time we arrived in jolly old England, and of course you arrive at Heathrow or Gatwick first thing in the morning when the sun's coming up when you're flying over there from the States, And what a sight that had to be! All of us guys pouring off those planes, and those guys, people at customs just had to run when we arrived. But it was fun. It was fun. A lot of guys hated it. I loved it.
Mm-hmm. Any other countries you really like besides England to work in?
I loved them all. Even I guess the worst. I won't call them worst because I'm not talking bad about the country. But as far as the atmosphere and the modern facilities and stuff, I guess the one that I was glad to be able to see all these countries. But India was pretty bad. I was happy to get to see India because I would never see it anywhere else, any other way to see India. But it was really bad. It was we was there in the middle of the summer. It was really hot. There was no air conditioning. It was, the food was horrible, and it was bad, And we also had some shows in Kuwait right after the first war over there.
Right.
And gosh, it was hot over there. And there was still a lot of stuff that hadn't been rebuilt from the war, but it was okay. It was okay. They catered to us. We stayed in a pretty decent hotel and everything, but God, it was hot. It stayed over 100 degrees every day.
I think that was the tour Vader got in trouble in.
That might have been the second tour over there.
Oh, okay.
I think that was the second tour that we had over there that Vader got in trouble on. Yeah, I was there for that too, my friend. I was the manager at that time, and I was in the TV studio when that all went down. And as soon as I saw him flip that damn table over, I grabbed I started taking my microphones and shit off and said, let's go. It's time to get out of here. I just knew I didn't want to be a part of that. I didn't want them to think that I had anything to do with that situation. And so when the tour was over, we all went home, and Vader's big butt, he had to sit right there, for another week or so. They let him go.
Yeah.
That was scary. He was lucky they didn't lock him up forever.
Yeah, it'd be like a Midnight Express situation.
Yeah, you just didn't pull stunts like that over that, especially during that time, or any time, even now. You wouldn't think, you just don't do stuff like that.
Right, in another country.
If they asked me if wrestling's fake, I went, hell yeah, let me out of here.
I think we have some questions from our message board if you want to answer them.
Oh, message boards. Oh, my favorite. This is my favorite part of the Internet, wrestling message boards. I had one for a little while, and I just couldn't take it anymore. I had to close it down. My days just went to hell. Every time I'd log on and go to the message board, my days went to hell. So let's hear some of these questions. I can't wait to hear this.
Well, we'll weed out some of the more odd ones.
No. Give me the bad ones too. Let's give me the bad ones too. I want, don't do no editing. I'll take the good with the bad. I'm not,
Never saw the fans on our message board then.
You really want the worst question you can find?
No.
They couldn't be any worse than the ones that ruined my day on my personal message board. There's some horrible stuff out there, guys. And you know it. I'm preaching to the choir here.
Yeah, right.
But there's some horrible, horrible stuff out there on the wrestling Internet. These are people that proclaim to be fans of our industry, but they do everything they can to kill us. They do everything they can to tear us down. Go ahead. Hit me with your best shot.
So everybody knows it's at audiowrestling.com after Percy Pringle's great recommendation of message boards.
Well, the Duck Man, he wants to know who does the most drugs in the wrestling business these days.
Now, see, there we go. Right off the bat, you want me to sit here and give you some... First of all, I'm not on the road these days, right? So, it's drugs and stuff and drinking. And I'm not going to say that I never done anything. I'm not going to say that I'm St. Percy the Archangel, because I'm definitely not an angel. I mean, I've done everything in my day, and thank God I'm still alive to talk about it, because a lot of my buddies are gone. Yeah. But I've been there, done that. And it's not like it used to be. It's just, it's not there. If it's going on, it's very well hidden, and it's very, very limited. Because I was with the WWF during the steroid trial, if you can remember those days when Vince was on trial for the steroids, And, brother, they piss-tested us every time we turned around. I'm talking about sometimes every day, back to back. And I know how rough it was because I failed 3 of them. It cost me about $12,000 in fines for smoking pot. So I know what... And then that was back in the day, you know, when everybody got high. You know, everybody smoked pot. I didn't think I could ever work without smoking a joint first. But it didn't take me long to find out that I could. But those days are gone. You know, I'm a better person for it. Those days are gone. We don't play that no more. But we did it. So as far as drugs in today's wrestling, if it's going on, it's very, very limited, and it's not like it used to be. Because everybody knew what everybody else was doing, and it's not like that anymore.
Right. I'm sure you saw you saw a lot of drug use back in the Dallas days, or in the Butler.
Oh, absolutely. You know, absolutely. Gosh, what can I say? I can't tell you a lie. I won't lie to you.
Right.
That's what I'm not going to lie to you.
We have some good questions from the message board too.
But I'm not going to. I would dare give any names out because like I said earlier, you know, if I point a finger, I got 3 fingers pointing at my fat ass.
We'll wait for the book.
Yeah. Oh no, I don't think you're going to see any names in the book either. I want to say, you know, things change, guys. We get older, we get smarter. I hope.
Right.
Well, the angry hero wants to know, you know, what was it like being suspended above the ring in a cage?
Okay, I've had that done to me several times in my career, and I assume he's talking about the time in Madison Square Gardens for WWE. That was
1996 Survivor Series.
Yes, that was it. That was in Madison Square Gardens, and man, like I said earlier, it was always one of my dreams to work in Madison Square Gardens. And I said for a lot of years, as I dreamed to get a big break in our business, that if I ever had the chance of working in Madison Square Gardens, I would work there once and then I would retire. You know, I wanted to do it so bad. But I remember after the first time that I worked there with The Undertaker, the first thing I said when we got back to the dressing room was, "When were we coming back?" So just to work in Madison Square Garden was always a thrill for me because that's the mecca of our industry, in my opinion. Notwithstanding the 80,000 plus people that we had in Wembley Stadium that year in London, I'll never forget that either. But back to your question, you know, just to be in the Garden and to be hung from the cage up there, I was the center of attention, and I love being the center of attention. And being hung in that cage over the ring was fun. I loved it, man. It was great. They even had these little cameras up there that would catch my facial expressions, and I'm sure you've seen the tapes. I made all the faces I could. I screamed like a little bitch. Ah, help me, help me! Oh, Undertaker, help me, I'm going to fall! Oh, yes. I've been blessed, guys. I've had a blast. It's been a fun ride.
Wildcat Woman wants to know if there is any one person, past or present, that you wish you could work with before you retire.
Gorgeous George.
Oh.
The original Gorgeous George. I never met the guy. I've seen him work on some real old films, which I'm sure it's the same ones that you've probably seen, you know,
right,
from the 50s and stuff. And I know he was the man that kind of, you know, just like Vince McMahon turned our industry around. He was kind of the man that kind of turned our industry around back in that day.
Right, when it first got on TV.
Right, with the bleached blonde hair. And, you know, I'm preaching to the choir again. I don't need to tell you about Gorgeous George. I think that it would be fantastic just to meet the guy and to walk to the ring with him, you know. I don't know. It's just something about Gorgeous George. He's one of my heroes, even though I never got a chance to meet him.
Wildcat Woman also wants to know if there's anything left for you to accomplish in your career.
Nope. Not one thing. I told you, I have done everything I have ever dreamed of doing. I can't think of anything that I would like to do that I haven't done in our business.
And now you're on In Your Head.
You know, yeah.
That was the last thing.
No. I wouldn't say that at all. But it's, you know what I mean. But no, I've said it probably 20 times already. I've been blessed, man, and I'll say it again. It's been a fantastic ride, and I'm not off the roller coaster yet.
Duckman wants to know: did you ever pull Mick Foley aside and tell him that jumping off the top of things onto really, really hard things was a bad idea?
I can remember saying, "Are you crazy?" You know? I remember saying that over and over again, you know, "Are you crazy?" But he always called me Uncle Paul, not just on TV when he was doing the Mankind character, not just on TV, even in the backstage and on a personal level, he always called me Uncle Paul.
Mm-hmm.
And Uncle Paul, what did you think of that? Are you crazy? My God, I love Mick to death. I really miss seeing him. I don't get to see him and talk to him too much anymore, but
he did some.
I love him to death.
He was still doing some of those crazy bumps back in the Dallas days when you said you were managing him.
Oh yeah, we had a scaffold match. What's one just pops in my mind when you say that? We had a scaffold match in Will Rogers Coliseum one time, and it was me and Eric Embry against Cactus Jack, Mick Foley, Mankind, whatever you want to call him. He was Cactus Jack then.
Right.
He hadn't been in the business very long. He was teaming with Skandar Akbar. Skandar Akbar, of course, was a manager there, and I was a manager, and my God, that was my first scaffold match ever. And oh, Lord. I mean, being hung in a cage in Madison Square Garden was a walk in the park compared to climbing up a scaffold with no protection at all, Oh, I was scared shitless. But anyway, I'm sure you know the story there, the old school scaffold match. In order to lose, you have to take the bump off the scaffold, right?
Right.
Of course, who volunteers to take the bump? Mick Foley.
Right.
And he broke his wrist during that fall. And back in the day, we weren't making a lot of money. None of us had any medical insurance or anything, and a lot of us still don't today. But that's another story. But he broke his wrist, couldn't afford to go to the doctor or anything, and it never healed back right. And he still has a problem with that wrist today because of that fall off the scaffold in Dallas back in the 80s.
Did you enjoy the change of pace that came with managing Mankind after being with The Undertaker for so long?
It really wasn't a change of pace because most of the time Mankind was wrestling in The Undertaker. And like I said earlier, during my career with WWE, I was either with him or against him. So there really wasn't a big change. I almost said I had more fun with Mick Foley. Me and Mick Foley had a good time. We really did. Undertaker's a great guy behind the scenes, and he has a great sense of humor and a great personality and stuff. But when you saw him on TV, he couldn't show that. Mick Foley was different. When me and Mick Foley were out in the ring, we could joke around, laugh. Mick Foley had that mask on, so you couldn't see him smiling from ear to ear and us telling jokes and laughing our ass off. And that's something that I couldn't do with The Undertaker. We couldn't, even though I did sometimes. I would make it my mission to try to make Undertaker laugh out at the ring. And sometimes he would bite his lip till it bled to keep from laughing. But it did cuss me out when we got back to the ring. Would you please stop that shit, But that was the only difference between the two, is that I could get by with a lot more shit with Mick Foley than I could with The Undertaker.
Yeah, just a couple more questions before we let you go. We've been on the line for a while now.
Well, you can have me as long as you want.
Excellent.
I mean, what does it take, Duckman wants to know, to become a manager in the wrestling world nowadays? Is it possible for somebody who doesn't plan to be a wrestler to get into it?
Yeah, that's what happened to me. I started out in the business as a wrestler. And the guy that gave me the name Percy Pringle, his name was Frankie Kane. He's a legend. He was known as the Great Mephisto back in the day. He was also wore a mask as one of J.C. Dyke's Infernos back in the 60s and 70s. Well, anyway, long story short, he was booking for a company out of Mississippi, and me, myself, and Michael Hayes, and Terry Gordy, and Kamala, we all got our start there. And that's where I got the name Percy Pringle. He saw me wrestle for the first time, and when I got back to the dressing room, he goes, "Percy, have you ever thought about being a manager?" That told me something right there, So I'm sure there's a lot of guys out there that would like to be a wrestler. They might be make a good manager. You just don't ever know. And I'm sure, there's a great need for managers. And like we've already talked about all that. And,
I think when Brock Lesnar came in, him being paired with Paul Heyman, I think really helped make him a big star.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, young guys that are lucky enough to be paired up with great managers, such as Paul Heyman, Jim Cornette, Bobby Heenan, Captain Lou Albino, just to name a few. They were very, very lucky because they sat under the learning tree every night. They learned. They had somebody there with them all the time that could critique their matches, and when they got lost, could tell them what to do, could help them out. So it was you're right. You're right. It's great for a young guy to be able to draw off the experience of an old school man.
Right. Was there another question, Barbie?
Duckman wants to know, what do you think about the twists and turns of Kane's character? And do you still think Kane could be a dominant world heavyweight champion?
Oh, absolutely. Kane, Glenn Jacobs is like we talked about him earlier. He's a dear friend of mine and extremely talented. The only thing bad I can say about Glenn Jacobs is that he's too nice of a guy. He's too nice for his own good. He is a super great, fantastic guy. Really, really nice. I mean, he doesn't have an enemy, none whatsoever. And you asked me about the mask. When they took the mask off of him earlier. I thought it was wrong. It was the wrong thing to do, but it wasn't the wrong thing to do. And hell, like we said, we can always put the mask back on, right?
Right. It's kind of like I think Mick Foley when he wants to go back. If he has a big match and wants to do a big hardcore match, he becomes the Cactus Jack character.
Sure, absolutely.
I can see Kane doing the same thing.
When you establish such a character like that, such a monster like we did in The Undertaker and Kane, it's endless. Like we said before, it's endless. Mm-hmm. What the things that you can do.
Someone just put a question on while we're doing this show. The Flea wants to know what's your favorite place for barbecued ribs.
I bet I know they probably want me to say Abdullah's in Atlanta.
Maybe he sent that question in.
Yeah, he probably did. But to tell you the truth, I don't know. Omaha, Nebraska has some good barbecue rib places. In fact, here we go. Here's another story.
All right.
Omaha, Nebraska. There was this barbecue rib strip joint where we could go and watch the titties and eat barbecue.
Life doesn't get any better than that.
And I've seen them strippers come over to our table, where you have a big table full of wrestlers. I've seen them come over. They'd be topless waitresses delivering your barbecue to your damn table. And needless to say, there was a few nipples got dipped in the barbecue sauce.
I was just going to ask that.
Yeah. But that wasn't my favorite. That wasn't my favorite. I guess my favorite has to be around my hometown here. Some of the local places here around my hometown in Mobile, Alabama, down on the Gulf Coast. But from looking at me, you can always tell that I never had problem finding any place to eat. Although I can't eat as much as I used to. I'm just very, I probably enjoy food now more than I ever do because I have to be very particular about what I eat because of my gastric bypass surgery.
Right.
And but we've had some good food on the road.
Well, what's your favorite place on the road to eat? Doesn't have to be ribs.
Man, there's so many. Like every town,
every town has no place.
We always went to the same towns over and over and over. And I'm a very habitual person. I get into a routine of when I go to a town, I stay in the same hotel. I rent cars from the same rental-car company. I stay in the same hotel. I eat at the same places. You just get into the habit of doing the same things, because, why fix what's not broken? When you find a good routine, you stick with it.
Yeah.
So I've eaten in a lot of nice places, across the country. And being a country boy from Alabama, I never was one to be real fancy. I didn't care for the big, fancy, expensive restaurants. I like the little off-the-wall Chinese restaurants, barbecue restaurants, like you mentioned, and stuff like that. But to name a favorite place, you can look at me and tell everything was my favorite.
Same goes for me, Paul.
Oh, heck, I'm glad to hear that.
You still watch wrestling?
On the seafood diet.
Yeah.
Do I watch wrestling?
Yeah.
Yeah. To tell you the absolute truth, which I've done this entire interview, I probably watch more tapes, more DVDs and tapes of past stuff than I do of the current product. Now, if I don't watch all the time. I don't watch Raw. I don't watch SmackDown and their other shows all the time. I do every once in a while. If there's something on that I want to see, like if I read a spoiler on the internet, or if I'm talking to one of the boys and they tell me, something's going to be going down or something, I'll make a point to watch. But I don't make myself sit down in front of the TV every Monday or every Thursday night. Now, at one time I did. I never missed it. But things changed. It's 2005. Things changed. Bill Moody's changed. What can I say?
Yeah.
All right. Were you saying, Barbie?
No, go ahead.
I was just saying, were you a fan of Tough Enough? Or did you think it exposed too much of the business?
I know I can't just. I know. I'd say I know. I wasn't a fan. I can't say that I was a fan of it at all. I watched it the first season, just to see what the hell was going to be done,
Right.
But to say that I was a fan, I guess I'm just too old school for my own good, just like Jim Cornette is,
Yeah.
and Jimmy Hart, and Bobby Heenan, coming from the old school tradition like I did, it probably was too much of an expose for me.
Who are some of your favorite managers besides yourself?
I just named them.
Yeah, that's what
my all-time hero, my all-time idol, who has since become a very dear friend of mine, is Bobby Heenan. I patterned the early Percy Pringle after Bobby, bleaching my hair like Bobby's. I wore outfits like Bobby's, and tried to act like Bobby. And Bobby was my hero and still is. And like I said, he's a very dear friend. Bobby Heenan and Jim Cornette. I was in the business before Jim Cornette. But when I first got to my first experience with Jim Cornette was in Memphis, back when he first started, I started liking him right away. We just hit it off immediately, and we've been friends ever since. But Bobby Heenan's a man in my book.
Yeah, I think Bobby's he's the best of all time.
I love him to death. Great guy.
All right, before we let you go, is there anything you want to tell your fans out there?
I just want to say thank you. I want to tell you guys thank you. I appreciate your consideration and allowing me this time on your show. And I want to thank the fans for all the years of their support and for their continued support. And when you get a chance to stop by my website, check it out. If you're one of an internet freak like we are, stop in at percypringle.com. It's easy to remember and check out and see the good work that my webmaster does and read some of my stories, look at some of the old pictures, and if you don't like it, hell, go on to something else. It won't hurt my feelings. But everybody don't like everything, and I just want to say thanks. And if you see my name coming to your town again one day, which you never know, come and say hey, and say I heard you on In Your Head.
There's one more thing I want to ask too. Did doing the Paul Bearer?
Queer? I knew you were going to ask me if I was queer. Jesus Christ! Just because you suck one dick makes you queer. Now that's what you was going to ask me, now wasn't it?
Well, I was going to ask you that off the air.
Oh, okay. No, go ahead, man.
Did doing the Paul Bearer voice ever hurt your voice?
Yeah, it did. Back in the day, there was a time where we done interviews for every city that we would go to. We would do a special interview for each city. It wasn't like today. In fact, I don't even know if they even do interviews anymore like we used to for each city.
Like a local
each market. Like every place we would be, we would have to cut an interview for every city, every individual city, and sometimes 2 or 3 for each city. I remember in particular, me and Undertaker held the record one time. We'd done over 40 interviews one afternoon. And to do that voice for 40 interviews does put a strain on you, and yeah, it did. But most of the time, it didn't matter. I was having so much fun, like I said, that a little sore voice sure was a small price to pay to enjoy the career that I have.
Right. I bet a lot of the fans still come up to you and do that voice, right?
Oh, all the time. They always, that's one of the first things they ask me, do that voice, do that voice, do that voice. And it all depends what kind of mood I'm in, And so, sometimes I'll say, well, what do you do for a living? And the guy says, well, I fix cars. I said, well, come out to my car and change my oil and let me watch you do that. You're asking me to work for you.
Right.
But most of the time, I didn't mind, unless I was out with my family, trying to have a good time with my family, or out with my wife for dinner, or go to a movie, or whatever, But I always respected the fans, because I've always been a fan, and like I said, I'll die a fan, and I love the fans, and that's why I'm talking to you guys today. That's why I'm here today, because I love the fans.
Oh, yes.
I love it. Hey, careful. Vince might call you and hire you.
Oh, all right.
Be careful what you wish for.
That's jackisbackbrother@hotmail.com, if Vince wants to email me. Did you have one last question, Barbie?
Absolutely. One last question. You said a lot of fans ask you to do the voice, a lot of fans do impressions of the voice. How many people have you seen dressed like Paul Bearer come to shows?
Oh, man. When we were really hot, back in the day when the characters were really, really hot all the time. We saw some freaks, brother. That Undertaker character brought out some freaks. Talking about creatures of the night, they were creatures of the night. We would have them come and stake out at our hotels dressed up like me and the Undertaker and stand outside our room all night long. Call security, get rid of them, you know. And they would just stand there. They'd have the makeup on, they'd have an urn, and they'd just stand there, just like a statue. Oh, it was scary. It was really scary. And especially over in UK, and we had a lot of people in UK that used to dress up like us all the time. And you know, there's an old saying that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, and that's the way we took it. You know, that just showed that that we were doing something right.
Right.
We were doing something right. We created a monster.
I think Barbie dressed up like you to do this interview.
Oh, bless his heart.
Well, I should probably point out that we don't get a lot of sun, and we generally always wear suits. So, it's...
I can understand that, guys. I really can. I just want to say once more, I really appreciated your time. And, in fact, I read one of the interviews that you've done on the Internet today. You've done one with TNA star Lance Hoyt.
Lance Hoyt, yeah.
Yeah, y'all just done that recently, right?
Right, we did that. Last week we had 3 guests.
Yeah, I was just... doing that, and I was impressed with your style. And now that this is over, that I spent an hour with you, or a little over an hour with you guys. That you're extremely professional, and very well prepared, and very respectful. Because there's so many guys out there that don't respect our business and respect our business history, especially guys from the Internet. But you guys do a great job, and I really appreciate what you've done and what you're doing for our industry.
All right. Well, we really appreciate you coming on. It's been a pleasure. And maybe we'll have you on sometime. Maybe when the book comes out.
I was going to say, maybe we can do it again one day. You know how to find me, and we'll see what happens down the road.
All right.
You guys be safe, and Bobby, give my best to my friends over in jolly old England. We love you guys over there, and I hope to come back one day.
I certainly will.
Take care. Y'all have a good evening.
You too. Good luck in the future.